There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It lingers. It shows up when their name is no longer on your screen, but somehow their presence still is. They don't text, they don't call, they don't come forward and say the words your heart has been starving to hear, but they watch. They view your stories, they circle your name. They appear and disappear like a shadow that refuses to leave the room, and that silence starts doing something to you. It makes you question your own reality. If they care, why are they gone? If they're done, why are they still watching? If they miss you, why won't they just say it? So you start filling in the blanks with desperation. You post a little more carefully. You read into timing. You analyze every view, every like, every tiny digital breadcrumb like it's a confession they were too afraid to make. And underneath all of that is the real ache. You don't just want to know why they're watching. You want to know if you still matter. That's why this hurts so much. Because being watched without being chosen feels like emotional torture. It feels like being kept near but never held, remembered but not reached for, felt but not claimed. And if your ex is avoidant, this is exactly the kind of confusing emotional limbo they create without even meaning to. But here is the brutal truth most people do not want to hear. The more you chase meaning out of their silence, the less power you have inside it. Because avoidant people do not respond most deeply to pursuit. They respond to emotional pressure by shutting down. They respond to intensity by pulling back. They respond to your pain, not always with cruelty, but with overwhelm. And the tragedy is, the more visibly wounded you become, the more they feel the weight of what they cannot handle. So if you've been trying to decode their watching as proof that you should reach out, explain more, love harder, show them what they lost, this may be the very thing keeping you trapped in the role they unconsciously assigned you. The one who still orbits, the one who still waits, the one who still bleeds on command. You need to understand something deeper. Your avoidant ex keeps watching you for one exact reason. Distance makes their feelings safe enough to feel. That is the reason. Not because they are always playing games,
Not because they never cared, not because every avoidant is secretly calculating, but because closeness activates them, and distance regulates them. When you were near, the relationship may have stirred longing, tenderness, attachment, even love. But it also stirred exposure, expectation, dependency, vulnerability, pressure, the possibility of being needed, the possibility of failing, the possibility of losing control of themselves. And for an avoidant nervous system, that emotional intensity does not register as romance. It registers as danger. Not physical danger, emotional danger, the kind the body remembers before the mind can explain it. The amygdala reads closeness as threat. The nervous system starts preparing for impact. Cortisol rises. The body becomes vigilant. They may not think, "I am scared of intimacy." It feels much more convincing than that. It feels like, something is off. I need space. This is too much. I don't feel like myself anymore. I just need to breathe. So they pull away. And the moment they pull away, something strange happens. The threat lowers. The pressure drops. Their nervous system settles enough for the emotional truth they were avoiding to start surfacing. The love they could not fully feel while inside the intensity becomes more accessible once they are outside of it. The dopamine of memory kicks in. Nostalgia softens the hard edges. Your absence becomes more digestible than your presence was. Now they can miss you. Now they can watch. Now they can revisit you from a distance that doesn't demand anything from them.
That's why so many avoidant exes become emotionally active in the shadows. They don't disappear because they feel nothing. They disappear because feeling becomes too loud when it gets close. Watching lets them experience you without being required to respond to you. It lets them touch the connection without stepping fully back into its heat. This is the part nobody tells you when your heart is breaking. Their silence is not always indifference. Sometimes it is dysregulation wearing the mask of indifference. And that distinction matters. Because if you misread their distance as proof that you were not enough, you will spend months trying to become more lovable, more attractive, more unbothered, more valuable, more impossible to leave. But the truth is, avoidant people often pull away not when you mean the least to them, but when they are least able to process what you mean. Let that land. Not when you mean the least, when they are least able to hold what you mean. That is why they keep watching, because part of them is still attached, still curious, still emotionally tethered, still checking whether you are there, whether you've changed, whether someone else has replaced them, whether the door is still cracked open, whether they still exist in your emotional world. Watching is a way of regulating the fear of total loss without risking the vulnerability of direct contact. And yes, sometimes they want reassurance without responsibility. Sometimes they want access without accountability. Sometimes they want to know they still matter to you while avoiding the emotional weight of showing that you matter to them. That is why this pattern can destroy your self-worth if you do not see it clearly, because it creates false hope. It keeps you spiritually on hold. It tempts you to confuse surveillance with sincerity. But being watched is not the same as being loved well. And that sentence alone could save you. Because what keeps many people trapped is not the breakup itself. It is the intermittent signal afterward, the half-presence, the emotional static, the tiny signs that keep the wound open. A view, a follow, a sudden reappearance, then nothing, then another silent glance from the dark. And each time it happens, your brain lights up. Dopamine doesn't only respond to reward, it responds to uncertainty, to maybe, to almost, to the possibility that relief is coming. That's what makes this so addictive. Your body starts craving the next sign, the next clue, the next proof that the bond is not dead. You are not just grieving them. You are chemically hooked on unpredictability. So now you have two nervous systems in a dance. The avoidant nervous system that can only approach through distance, and your wounded nervous system, starving for clarity, becoming more attached through inconsistency. This is why it feels impossible to let go. Not because the connection is always sacred, sometimes because the pattern is. And the pattern has teeth. Now here is the shift, the one that changes everything. If distance is where their feelings become accessible, then your most powerful move is not emotional performance. It is non-reactive absence. Not punishment, not games, not fake indifference, not posting to provoke, not disappearing in the hope that they panic and return with flowers and confessions. That is still a form of chasing, because your energy is still wrapped around their response. I'm talking about something cleaner, deeper, more dangerous in the best possible way. Emotional non-reactivity. The moment you stop feeding the loop, the entire dynamic changes. Because as long as you are visibly available, emotionally activated, subtly reaching, posting for impact, keeping the signal warm, they do not have to confront the full weight of losing access to you. They can keep watching, keep checking, keep sampling your energy in small doses, enough to soothe their curiosity, not enough to require courage. But when your energy becomes quiet in a real way, not performative, not strategic, just self-contained, something shifts inside them. The feed goes cold. The emotional mirror stops reflecting their importance back to them. They can no longer confirm, through your subtle responsiveness, that you are still psychologically orbiting them. And that is when the watching changes. It deepens. Because now they are not only looking at you, they are feeling your absence. Imagine them late at night, reaching for distraction and landing on your profile. They expect the familiar sensation, proof that you are still there, still in some emotional posture toward them. But something is different now. Your energy is no longer speaking to them. There is no hidden message, no ache leaking through the screen. No invitation, no pressure, no attempt to be seen by them specifically. Just life. Just movement. Just you existing beyond the relationship. That unsettles them more than your tears ever did. Because tears confirmed attachment. Silence confirms detachment. And detachment is what the avoidant person says they want, until they actually feel it coming from you. Then the story changes. Now they start wondering what happened inside you. Whether you finally saw through the pattern, whether someone else has your attention, whether your nervous system stopped reaching for theirs, whether the bond they thought they could revisit later has started dissolving without them. This is where the power dynamic flips. Not because you manipulated it, because you stepped out of the role. You are no longer the one anxiously interpreting shadows. You are no longer sitting in the courtroom of their silence, begging for a verdict. You are no longer proving how deeply you can love someone who only knows how to consume love in fragments. And that is when the avoidant ex often begins to feel what they postponed. Missing, curiosity, restlessness, regret, sometimes obsession. Because what they could manage from afar starts slipping farther away. The psychological comfort of knowing you are still emotionally there begins to vanish. And without that safety net, the feelings they kept in storage start coming online all at once. They think about the way you understood them before they understood themselves. They replay the moments they were cold and you stayed warm. They remember your voice, your softness, the steadiness they acted like they didn't need. They start comparing everyone to the person they only realized the value of once the pressure was gone and the loss became real. But this is the part where you must be careful. Because when the pattern breaks, avoidant people often reappear. Not always transformed, not always ready, not always capable of sustaining what they suddenly feel. Sometimes they come back because they truly miss you. Sometimes because your absence disrupted their emotional control. Sometimes because they want to reconnect. Sometimes because they want relief from the discomfort of losing their place in your heart. Those are not the same thing. And if you are not grounded, you will mistake their return for resolution. A message is not change. Curiosity is not commitment. Missing you is not the same as being able to love you well. You have to watch for the deeper pattern, not just the resurfacing. Do they take emotional responsibility or just reopen contact? Do they speak clearly or hover ambiguously? Do they tolerate real intimacy or only brief reconnection before withdrawing again? Do they show consistency when closeness returns, or does the same shutdown begin the moment vulnerability is required? Because this is where so many people lose themselves all over again. They spend months rebuilding their center, only to abandon it the second the avoidant ex reaches out with one emotionally charged sentence, one midnight confession, one nostalgic memory, one "I've been thinking about you." And suddenly the old chemicals flood back. Hope, dopamine, fantasy, relief. Be careful. A nervous system can confuse familiar pain with love if it has been deprived long enough. So if they come back, do not meet them from your wound. Meet them from your worth. That means you do not over-explain. You do not audition for the role again. You do not collapse into gratitude just because they finally offered crumbs with eye contact. You listen. You observe. You let reality speak louder than longing. You let their actions tell you whether this is contact born from genuine emotional growth or just another cycle of proximity and retreat. Because your healing was never supposed to make you more available to confusion. It was supposed to make confusion feel unacceptable. This is the identity shift most people resist, because it sounds lonely before it feels liberating. You have to become someone who no longer measures love by longing. Someone who no longer thinks being unforgettable is the same as being cherished. Someone who understands that an avoidant ex watching you is not proof that you should wait. It is proof that your presence still moves them, even if they do not yet have the capacity to meet it directly. And that may validate your heart, but it should not govern your life. You do not need to shrink your truth just because it overwhelms someone who was taught to survive by disconnecting from theirs. You do not need to become more silent, more convenient, less emotional, less deep, less needing, less alive. You were not too much. You were too real for someone who had built their safety around distance. There is nothing shameful about the fact that they still watch you. Of course they do. Energy like yours is hard to forget. Safety like yours is rare. Genuine emotional presence is not easy to replace with casual distractions and half-open connections. If you loved deeply, if you saw them clearly, if you touched places inside them that they spent years protecting with detachment, then yes, part of them will keep looking. But let them look. You keep walking. Let them wonder. You keep becoming. Let them feel the slow, unbearable realization that your love was not weak because it stayed soft. It was powerful because it stayed true. And now that same power is no longer reaching for them. It is rebuilding you. That is what changes everything. Not making them jealous, not making them panic, not making them chase. Becoming unavailable to the version of love that starved you. There is a moment in real healing when the question changes. You stop asking, "Why do they keep watching me?" And you start asking, "Why was I ever willing to settle for being watched instead of being chosen?" That is the moment your life begins to come back, because now you are no longer hypnotized by their distance. You see it, you understand it, you even have compassion for it. but you do not kneel before it anymore. You realize their behavior was a reflection of their nervous system, their conditioning, their fear, their unprocessed intimacy wounds, not a final statement about your value. And once you stop personalizing their incapacity, your self-worth stops bleeding. You get your breath back. You get your standards back. You get your mind back. And maybe for the first time, you understand that your power was never in making the avoidant stay. Your power was in becoming the one person who would never abandon you again. So yes, your avoidant ex keeps watching you because distance lets them feel what closeness made them run from. That is the exact reason. Distance quiets their defenses enough for attachment to surface. It gives them access to the feelings they could not hold in real time. It lets them miss you without having to face you, want you without risking you, keep contact without accountability. But your job is not to turn that into a love story. Your job is to turn it into freedom. Let them watch the version of you that no longer performs pain for attention. Let them watch the version of you that stopped translating crumbs into promises. Let them watch the version of you that knows love is not proven by who returns when they feel empty, but by who remains present when things get real. And if one day they do come back differently, with clarity, consistency, depth, accountability, then you will be able to see that too. Not from desperation, from discernment. But until then, understand this with your whole body. You are not here to be a haunting memory in someone else's unresolved attachment pattern. You are here to become whole. You are here to become calm in the place where you used to beg, clear in the place where you used to obsess, untouchable in the place where you used to break. And once that happens, everything reverses. Their watching no longer controls your emotions. Their silence no longer writes your story. Their confusion no longer becomes your prison. Because now, you know who you are. Not the one left behind. Not the one almost loved. Not the one waiting to be fully chosen by someone afraid of choosing. You are the one who walked through uncertainty and did not disappear. The one who faced the silence and found a voice deeper than validation. The one who turned heartbreak into self-respect. The one who no longer needs to be watched to know they are worth seeing. And that kind of power? It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It leaves an imprint and keeps moving.